today we're going to talk about the future of e-commerce. I think a lot have happened over the last couple of years with the pandemic. I'll jump into that in a second, but maybe we should just introduce ourselves first. My name is Morten. I'm the co-founder of a company called MXNEY. We invest and fund e-commerce businesses in order to help them grow and scale their businesses. Maybe you could present yourself.
Sure, I think this works now.
It works, great.
I hope so at least. Yeah, I'm Vasilij Brandt and one of the co-founders of Blazar Capital, which is an e-commerce brand incubator which builds brands within primarily accessories, health and beauty.
Yeah, my name is Christian. I've been in the e-commerce business the last 10 years. I started out in a ski and snowboard company called Black Snow, and then I changed last year to Blazar Capital, one of their startups. So still on our early growth journey with a company selling hair growth products. So a very skeptical audience.
Yeah, cool. So I'm Kristoffer, and I have a company called MXNEY. It's a software company where we created a customer data platform. My background for being here is that I have been a company called Fertile. We had 12 different web shops, and we were sold back in 2018 to Meta's, the first competitor that they ever bought. So, yeah.
Very cool. My name is Josh Plante. I am the CMO at Soundboks. We make a Bluetooth performance speaker, founded here out of Denmark. Prior to that, I was with Adidas for close to 11 years, where I left as the global head of brand marketing for the running category. Then I was also at Pandora. We did a significant amount of our business online, and we're doing the same here at Soundboks.
Cool.
Great, thank you guys. So over the last couple of years, we have had a pandemic, obviously, and a lot happened with e-commerce and online sales. I think we've seen 150 million new consumers worldwide going online. We have had online sales hitting all-time high, but that also means more customers, more competition. We're seeing a lot of businesses going online, analog businesses being physical retailers are going online. We have seen the iOS 14 making it more difficult to market your products to the right target groups and so forth. All leading to increased acquisition costs. So in the e-commerce space, you need to do more than just market your product today on like the traditional channels, digital channels. So a fast and easy purchase are becoming the norm. So Vasilij, how do you see online brands can set themselves apart in all this new space or new environment?
I mean, when it comes to quick purchases, I guess it's all about reducing friction, right? We want to be able to shop really, really quick. We want to not have any barriers during the journey. We want to be able to do it instantly, see an ad, see something that we embrace and then convert within a very short time frame. So I mean, we had a really interesting discussion just before with Soundboks. It's actually the complete opposite, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talk about fast and easy purchases. I think that is definitely the norm for a lot of consumers and a lot of products. I would say maybe a little bit less so for our customers and our products, right? It's 1,000 euros or 6,700 DKK. I think that is not usually a purchase that people make in the spur of the moment, but it is equally relevant for us to be top of mind, right? So I think when we talk about the different consumers, how they want to use our product, making sure that we're always there, sort of in their feeds, serving up, the best sort of understanding of how our product can be relevant for them. I mean, because our customer journey is anywhere from 30 to 90 days, but we just got to make sure that we're in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, I see. We're all seeing some interesting trends in Asia in particular, where things are really being consolidated, right? So in Europe, when we shop, it's usually happening through various different channels where we find products either through Google, through social media, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, or through influencers and affiliates, whereas in Asia now it's much more consolidated into one single systems. Mm-hmm. In China it's very much based on WeChat as an example, which is an ecosystem where people are literally having all their social media, doing all their shopping, they're doing all their payments through that. We see it in Korea, where they are now doing the same thing with Kakao Talk. We're seeing it in Japan now, really being pushed through Line as an example. So Asia is really much consolidating the journey now, really reducing friction to the bare minimum, so that being able to do what you want in the online universe, in particular when it comes to shopping, doesn't have to be too complex, right? Whether that's going to happen in the Western world is hard to say. I mean, Facebook owns a pretty big network by now with both Instagram and WhatsApp and many other apps. And my hypothesis is that within the coming years, it will slowly be integrated, just like they're already doing with a lot of different functions within the Facebook network. But it is a consumer behavioral change that has to happen, right? The Western world, we're not used to just do most of our things in one place. But there might definitely be a chance that is going to be what we will be experiencing in the future.
Thanks. And so everyone is also talking a lot about personalized customer experience and so forth. Maybe Kristoffer, you could tell us a little bit about how do you actually segment like your products, and how do you identify how to actually create this personalized customer experience?
Yeah, so I think, and it's of course it's my background with Customize. It's a lot about starting owning your own data. So in general, the part about starting taking decision based on data and collecting all data into the same place onto a single customer view is like one of the main things that going to be like the reason why people actually can make a personalized experience. So we see like a lot of examples on different kind of categories, clothing companies, for example, that actually are starting collecting more and more data on their leads and their customers, getting sign-ups. Then instead of just getting an email, they are starting to like, can I get the color of your favorite pair of jeans? Can I get the size you typically like to wear? So starting to collect more and more data into a single customer is also what is making it possible for like the typical marketing people to actually create a special and personalized experience. I know we talked about it a bit before, Christian, with example the trousers.
Yeah, I mean, especially like in the beauty space and in the health space, like quizzes becomes more and more
gamification.
Just look at the past 2 years, it's been exploding kind of.
Yeah.
And it's not just the regular type form quizzes, but it's like highly advanced quizzes that navigates the users to the right products. And once you have entered the quiz, it will also normally connect with different channels such as email and Facebook, and that data you would be able to own and customize the messages through those data points. So it's just what we have seen is that quiz is just like exploding in this space because people need to help themselves and they're not satisfied with just the left bar of filters. They need more advanced guidance. I think
in Customize and what we are focusing a lot on, it's about segmenting people on more than just one KPI. So typically what I did back when I was in First is that we did focus on what is the customer lifetime value, because that's the main metrics we are performing on. But what we do in Customize is more like we are trying to take several KPIs into like the way of segmenting people. So actually it's about knowing what is the return rate on a customer, what is the order average, what is the profit on a customer, what is the customer lifetime, of course, and what can we expect them to be in the future. And that's information where we can start to build segments because of we have gained all the data from different platforms. So today it's way typical that you see that you have data, an average B2C company have data in 32 different tools, and of course the most of it is anonymous, and that's where, as we see it, there is coming a lot of data analytics tools that actually are trying to like take all of this anonymous data and put it into a single customer, and that's really where we see that you can make it different in the industry of making a personalized experience.
I think personalization does not necessarily have to be based on super hardcore. Based on a hardcore data-driven approach, right? Obviously, a lot of us.
I'm a bit colored.
I agree. And I'm also into that. But but you can also do it in much more software, right? So we see now that live shopping is really booming. Again, Asia was the front runners. Now it's coming to the West, but not necessarily just live shopping, but also live consumer experiences. We are in some of our brand now testing out doing live customer service as an example. So if you go to our watch company, you can go to the website there and reach out. Kind of, we have this little floating widget in the lower right corner, where you can click and then have a live session with our customer experience team. So instead of having just a live chat where it texts back and forth, you're actually sitting with a human being, getting direct feedback on what you should be purchasing based on the needs and wants that you're sharing as part of the session. So here you don't need complex algorithms to be able to create a customized journey for the customer. Here's just based on standard old school human interaction, and we're seeing that really booming now, not just from a shopping perspective but also customer experience perspective. And we're definitely seeing an increasing trend and more people using it, but it's still early days, and I think it will take a bit of time before the Western world will be adjusted more to it. But it's super interesting.
I guess it's in general, it's all about making a good customer experience. So data is a part of make it possible, but in general, good customer service is also a really big part of it. And as a small step that we did in Europe for a couple of years ago was generally just a live chat in most of the websites that you are buying online on. So I think the part about just being available for the customers and also combine it with data points, that is where you kind of create the good experience for sure, because human interaction is like the main source of giving a good experience, definitely.
Thanks. And what about now? Everybody for years have been talking about virtual reality, augmented reality, and so forth. You're laughing a bit. Personally, I purchased the Oculus Rift, I think 4 or 5 years ago, and I must admit I haven't done any purchases or have had any customer experience related to purchasing products in VR yet. But is that something you're seeing coming, or is it just the new hot topic to talk about, but not really something you see as the future?
Yeah, I can kick off.
I can start on this one, because I think, especially with Soundboks, right? Like our product and the experience that we try to create is very physical, right? It's also very emotional, and I think that is never going to go away. And I think people always crave these personal interactions. I think those tools are amazing. We have been talking about them for a long time. Like you said, you bought something 4 or 5 years ago. We're still here 4 or 5 years later, and we're talking about the same thing, still waiting for it to take off. I mean, I think there are definitely positive applications for both AR and VR. I think we use it a little bit similar to IKEA, so people can get an understanding of the size of the product, how will it fit within my space or my experience. But I think, for particular products, when we're trying to create an atmosphere, an emotion, and a community, I don't think AR or VR are ever going to be able to substitute for those things.
I think it's a big part also to look into which kind of different industry it's about, because for example, I did buy a new pair of glasses. It's quite new for me. And I went to Louis Nielsen's website to see what kind of glasses could be for me, and they actually have a VR function where I can basically take a picture of my full head and put glasses on, and it wasn't these I started with, because I went down to the shop and ended up with buying something else. But that's a part where I can actually see that it's getting me closer to actually taking a decision. So in that specific case, it did make sense, definitely. But I also think, as you said, Josh, it's not necessarily something that is fits for every kind of business.
Yeah, I think especially in your case, though, you're talking about it providing real customer value, right? So when you can do that and you can actually provide less friction in this consumer journey, and it's applicable versus just something that's nice to have or maybe fancy, then I think. Then I think it's unnecessary. But when it's a positive application like that, but like you said, at the end of the day, you ultimately end up going into the retail store because you need to see everything in person.
Exactly.
So.
And what about augmented reality? Is everybody walking around in 2 years' time with the new Facebook Ray-Ban lookalike glasses, and then just looking at a shirt? Someone wear a shirt, and then you can just simply buy blinking, buying that shirt or whatever? Or is that long down the road, or is that something any of you are considering?
I mean, I actually think we might be joking around here, right?
Yeah.
I think that augmented reality is going to be massive within the next couple of years. 1/5 of Facebook staff right now, so 20% are working on virtual reality, so VR, not AR. And they are in the process now of creating this meta universe. So what they're trying to do is to create Facebook, but in a meta universe space. So right now, when we talk to each other, we text on WhatsApp, or we text on each other's feeds or whatever. But in 5 years from now, their vision is that we're going to sit in the same room. We might sit at home, but we might be sitting exactly like this, talking with each other. Right? So that's, I think, the ultimate vision of creating this meta universe. And when that's going to happen, I don't think it's an if, when. Whether it's going to work, that's a question. But when it's going to happen, it's going to be a massive marketplace. It could become a massive marketplace. A lot of us are talking about what is the next marketing channel, right? What influencers was 7 years ago, and what Facebook marketing was 7 years ago. What is that channel in the next couple of years? And I don't think many have the answer, right? Everything, Facebook's becoming super expensive now. Google's becoming super expensive. Influencers, super expensive. So where should we be going? And I personally think that advertising through AR, also VR, most likely within the coming 5 years, 10 years, is going to be a big thing. But I mean, it's still very early.
Yeah, it is.
It's really hard to say, right? But when 20% of work kind of Facebook, that's a big investment.
Yeah. Maybe we do a reunion in 4 or 5 years.
We should be doing that.
Let's see if you're right.
All right. So I read I think a couple of days ago that more than 50% of young consumers, they are basically purchasing from e-commerce through the social media, and by basically discovering the brands through social media. So at least I think we have a couple of representatives for companies building brands, and so how do you see basically that you can, as a brand, enable a holistic representations across basically all channels to represent your brand digitally?
I mean,
yeah. Sorry, I'm trying. No.
Yeah.
Oh.
The batteries didn't work. At least when we encourage all our brands to run full spectrum strategy always. So we never want any brand just rely on one channel or 2 marketing channels, because it is too risky. And I think last 12 months have been a prime example of that. As just an example, the biggest brand in Blazar, which is North Green, their CPC price on Facebook in July 2020 was 51 cents. In July 2021, it was 1.10 euro. So it's more than 100% increase on the cost. If we were relying on Facebook only, that would be a double up on our cost of sale, which is just insane. So at least in our case, we always encourage a full spectrum strategy where you pursue everything. And I think that has been for us a fortunate thing in the past year. So Facebook is one thing, all advertising in their network. You have all the Google, obviously, which has also increased a lot. But there are still some cheap channels out there, like native marketing through Taboola, Outbrain. We're using that. You're testing that right now, which is super cheap to generate traffic. GDN is still cheap on Google. Influencer marketing is still cheap in certain markets, and these markets we're definitely capitalizing into. Affiliate marketing is still affordable in many countries. Your PR is always a good thing. Content marketing, blogs. There's a lot of things you can do here. And it's just important to do so if you are relying on social media right now, because I mean you're saying 52% are shopping through it, right? But if cost of sale is going to be through the roof, you just need to think differently.
And I think also, like it as Kristoffer said, it becomes more and more important to invest in owned media. So you own the leads, and you can do like personalized messages to your like own leads instead of just investing in paid channels. For sure. Yeah.
I think what we did experience when the iOS 14 update came was that it was not. There was definitely some business that was relying all their advertising cost on Facebook, and of course they ended up having big issues. And of course they were willing to look into kind of owning their data, try to do something different. But it also changed something in the market about people being aware of that. You know, the marketing world can change from one day to another. For example, with Apple making an update. They're coming with a new update in the end of September. And it's going to hit primarily the email marketing. So it's more like the thing about, as Vasilij said, be on different channels, do something that you're not relying on a single thing, because that can change tomorrow. Google can update like their algorithm, say, okay, now we're not going to accept these kind of results anymore, and you're going to disappear from Google. So totally agree on it, absolutely. And actually, when I was in First, we did focus only on like, you know, two things. It was like Google and was the email. And I don't know what they're going to do like when the email update are coming from Apple, because they are definitely going to meet some issues.
A lot of also a lot of the brands which have been SEO dependent, right?
Yeah.
One update from one day to another, you can just wipe that brand.
Exactly. Exactly.
So that it doesn't have to be full spectrum strategy, but at least diversify into 3, 4, 5, 6 different channels. I think that's a prerequisite to be safe from a marketing perspective.
Exactly.
But one thing is using this like cross-channel approach. Another thing is we're seeing a lot of like companies marketing their products like cross-border and thereby lowering their customer acquisition costs and targeting basically a larger group of customers. I think a lot of especially like young companies are probably considering when is the right time to go global rather than being local. Maybe you could put a few words on that question.
We basically started out globally, focusing on having an English site, and also because it's super cheap to send to most European countries if you have the right carriers. But basically also if you look like at Facebook, that is like the perfect tool to expand and look for new market opportunities. It's actually sometimes you will get better results to have like a bigger audience. So Facebook knows that, and like we've seen that when we tried out like Denmark and focusing on Denmark solely on our ads, we performed worse than having like a huge audience with Denmark as part of Europe. So it's much easier to scale globally. Back in the day when I started out in e-commerce, it was way harder. And you also have Shopify. You can easily duplicate your store, make it localized, and the barriers are just not there anymore.
But how do you understand? Maybe this for you, Kristoffer. How do you understand basically whether there's a demand? You know, one thing is understanding your local country, but how do you understand whether there's a demand for products like cross-border and you know? And how do you also, how will marketing basically translate into like this cross-cultural?
Yeah, so of course, so going back to the data part, of course, which is our main focus. Of course, there is data that can back you up in taking decisions on moving to new markets. But of course, there is no country that are look-alike. So yeah, maybe we have like Sweden and Norway that are similar to Denmark, and typically it's kind of the same products because the same kind of culture. But going to Germany is a whole different thing. Going to UK is a whole. Is a whole different thing, right? The best thing as we see it is just to test, learn, and adapt, and it's basically what we are talking with our customers about. It's way easier, as Christian said, to open up a new market, test it off, collect some data on it, match it up with the data you already have, to take a healthy decision on it. It's not that you should take decision every time on data. It's just like it's give you a better statistical chance to take the right decision. So what we typically see that our customers are doing, that they are opening up in new countries way earlier than they did before. We did talk about it outside as well, that back in the days, typically you waited to being like 10 million euros in yearly revenue before you started up opening in new countries, and it was typically because it was super expensive to start up new countries. But what we see now is like when you're hitting like 5 million, 10 million, you're like, okay, let's open up in Germany, let's open up in UK, Norway, Sweden, and you guys actually are starting like just like being white off with wall shops.
Yeah, I mean, Nordgren is really strong in Korea and Japan, and for us, I mean, we started out. We tried also Japan, and we didn't do the research needed, and found out that like hair growth is not a term in Japanese, and like there was a lot of things that was quite messy, so we had to kind of focus on Europe again. But I think you really need to go into the data and also look at like trends. If you see countries that perform well on conversion rate, and have some interesting signals, then you can invest in those countries afterwards. But do the research for sure.
But that's an example. That's a prime example again, right? That data is not always the only solution. You need to look at the soft variable as well, and just make hypotheses in advance of doing something. I mean, now you mentioned Nordgreen doing well in Asia. When we launched the brand, we launched in Asia before Denmark, more or less. And we created, and that's because it had some hypotheses we had in the beginning that Nordic design resonates well with people in Japan and Korea and China. They love Scandinavian design. They have the whole wabi-sabi culture, which fits the Scandinavian design culture. They love watches, especially in Japan. You know, Japanese quartz movements that have been there for years. Seiko, Citizen, big brands. So we had a strong hypothesis in advance that Japan will be a good market for Nordgreen. There's demand for the product. It's a double-digit billion-dollar market. Let's test it out, right? And so that was kind of based on quality variables together with a lot of quantitative variables that we then jointly made us prove the hypothesis. So right now, even though we are Nordgreen's Danish brand, 70 people are sitting in Copenhagen, only 4% of the revenue is actually taking place in Denmark. The rest is taking place in Asia, the US, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Middle East. And when that brand was started, we actually launched 14 websites from day zero, which is extreme because this also requires a bit of capital and it requires people. But that was based on a lot of hypotheses we created in advance that these markets will work best because X, Y, and Z. And then we tested them. Then 5 or so were shut down after 3 months when the test was done, and the rest was then scaled. So there's different ways you can do it. I think for us at least, the most important thing is just to use quantitative information and qualitative jointly.
Yeah.
And now talking about a global market and talking about personalized customer experiences, how do you balance these two by, in a global market creating personal experiences for customers with different culture and so forth?
But that's based on, we discussed just briefly in the beginning, localizing the strategies, which you guys have also done some of your countries. And if you enter, so if you start in Denmark, as an example, and enter Western markets like Germany, France, UK, Spain, there's not, you don't have to do radical things. You can still use Facebook as a marketplace. You can still use Google as a marketing channel and things like that. Whereas if you want into China, it's a whole different monster. You need to have a completely local infrastructure. Be on Tmall, use Baidu, use Weibo, WeChat, all these local platforms. You can't use what works over here because it's not available. And the same in other Asian markets, or Middle Eastern markets, as an example, South America. So localizing those experiences so consumers believe they're shopping on a national website, but when the conversion actually takes place, the shipment comes from whatever country you have your warehouse in. That's the way forward. And some countries are just super niche, and you just need to understand those local demands that the consumers have.
Are you guys having like local language in all the different countries you are in?
So all the markets where the English language capabilities are poor, absolutely. So local language, local currencies, local payment methods. As an example, in Japan, we have Konbini, which allows people to buy the product online, but they actually don't pay for it until going down to local convenience store where they pay with cash, because people below 16 or 18, don't have access to credit cards, so they need to pay cash. So they can do that through convenience stores, through Konbini as an example. And if you don't have that, you're losing out on Gen Z more or less, right? Or the younger segment. So you need to really understand these requirements that are in the local markets, which makes them harder to enter compared to if you just go to UK or Germany. I mean, even Germany, Klarna is a pretty good start. Yep. So Ford, right? Yep. For in paying in installments and things like that. Yep. But localizing that experience beyond just personalizing the product and the product journey is, I think, super important to make it work. Not sure if you have any. Okay.
Yeah, great. Thanks. I think having a discussion about e-commerce and the future of e-commerce is maybe a bit odd without basically addressing the sales on marketplaces and Amazon. I saw yesterday that there was a great article about Soundboks and how you use marketplaces such as Amazon to sell your product. In the future, do you see the use of marketplaces as a necessary evil or just an opportunity to basically increase your sales, or how do you see the, and how does brands basically be working with the marketplace sales in the future, especially taking into account that a lot of searches on marketplaces are non-branded searches, but more like on this product type and so forth. How do you see the future of branding on marketplaces?
Yeah,
Joss?
maybe I can start with that one. We work quite closely with Amazon, and I don't see marketplaces as an evil. I think there are great opportunities for brand to grow, especially as we expand into new markets. I think a lot of us here are startups or scale-ups, so we don't necessarily have that brand trust or maybe that authenticity in some of these markets where these marketplaces can provide that for us, right? Because people are already going to Amazon because they know them, they trust the reviews that are on there, and the barrier to entry is quite low, because if I buy a product from them, okay, I didn't realize it was going to be 15 kgs, I didn't realize it was going to be 126 decibels, maybe it's not for me, I can send it back because I have that trust. And I think, we talked about localization earlier. How can I adapt on the US Amazon marketplace versus the German marketplace? What am I doing for my languages? What am I doing with my payment providers and these things? I mean, I think for us, it gives a level of trust for the consumer and also a huge awareness driver, right? And it puts us on par with some of those other big players. So I am a firm believer in marketplaces. I think they can provide tremendous growth and good opportunities, lower the barrier to entry to customers. And then the more you can prove yourself on these marketplaces, if you can control your products and your distribution, then you can also start building out these bigger branded experiences on there. And I think, it's been something.
How do you do that?
I mean, we work with our Amazon colleagues, right? And they say, okay, this is what we can show them in terms of growth. And then imagine if we had a more branded type experience, if we can go into all the USPs, if we can talk about the different use cases, if we can link to other products that are in this universe. And they are super willing to work with us on that, because I think we've shown that we can provide the kind of growth that not only we're looking for, but they're looking for as well.
I think when I was in Fertile, we also did have a distribution company where we had like different kind of products, and we actually decided that Amazon wasn't supposed to be like a good profit case. It was basically just to get new distributor on in the specific countries. So that's why we ended up going first to Amazon in Germany, and like they have fines for everything, putting the label a bit on the sideline or on the package and stuff like that, and we didn't earn any money on it, but it was like a part of our go-to-market marketing mix. So yeah, for us it did work fine. I guess it's kind of a bit like branding. So how much does it give you in the end? But it was definitely something that we decided to do because it opened up for a new market. It was like trustworthy going to a German market where we didn't have like any German-speaking people. They have like a German customer service and stuff like that. They're taking care of all like issues in the countries that you are in. So I definitely also see it as a part of the future, but I see it more as a part of your marketing mix instead of just being like the only source of your revenue in general.
Yeah, I mean, I think this goes back to what you were talking about earlier, is just making sure that we're diversifying sort of where we're putting our eggs in our basket, right? Yeah. Because I think, they can be tremendous for those things. I mean, of course, we can talk about Amazon, but we also need to talk about markets and localization, right? Because we talked about France earlier when we were just outside. You have, platforms like Fnac, you have platforms like VP on there, and it's like, what are we doing to be relevant and resonant in these individual markets? It's not always necessarily our own web shop, and maybe it's not always necessarily Amazon. You talk a lot about Asia. Yeah. So I think,
Agree.
No, but yeah, and totally. But I think it also depends on Amazon. In particular, depends on the market you want to focus on. In the US, Amazon equals Google, right? 75%, 74 or 75% of all consumers now in the US start their journey on Amazon. Mm-hmm. So if you're not there, you might lose out already, right? So if people use Amazon as their Google to find their first inspiration, they can't find your product, then they might not choose you at the end, no matter what, right? So I think in the US in particular, Amazon is like, you just have to be there. Yeah. Other markets, it's obviously it's growing, but based on the kind of the populations of users starting there, you can then assess whether it makes sense to start there or not. And yeah, of course, globally, China, Tmall, that's where everything happens. So you just have to be on Tmall and Taobao. Middle East, Namshi, there's so many different ones. But I think it's also dangerous to overdo it. We had a tendency to overdo it in the beginning. We launched Lazada and Blazar and Zalando and Namshi and all of them from the beginning, but didn't give them enough attention. We just thought, putting the products on, people find them, we're going to sell.
Yeah.
But when you realize your product is within a product mix of millions of products, it's pretty hard to find if you don't do advertising. Yeah. So you need to really give the marketplace attention. You need people work on those marketplaces if you are to enter them. Just having them lying there with your products on, unless you have a really niche product with a high search volume, it's just not going to work.
Yeah. Great. I think that's it. Amazon is here to stay probably, so play a better play along rather than try to fight them. I think if there's any questions from the audience, then we could do a Q&A session. If anyone wants to tap in.
Seems like a no.
Seems like a no.
I guess we covered everything.
Yeah, apparently. That's one question.
So you talked about launching Northern in Asia as well in the beginning. How did you manage the logistics of launching in sort of Asia in the beginning?
Good question.
So the beautiful thing about doing e-commerce today compared to 10 years ago is the infrastructure you have globally from a logistical and operational perspective. Shipping from A to B has never been easier or faster. So when we started, we didn't really have to create a warehouse in Asia to make our operations there possible. We had a warehouse in first it was Germany and Copenhagen, and we shipped to Asia within 2 days. Some countries 3 days. So we actually started locally within the western part of the world and shipped cross-border. And that's still an option. You can do 2 days delivery to South Korea with no problem.
Insane.
Which sounds insane, but that's the reality. However, then there's the whole sustainability discussion, right? Is that suitable? Is that feasible? If you produce in Asia, ship it to Europe, send it back, it's for us, it's not the right thing. So we are now creating a more local infrastructure globally to reduce our footprint in regards to that. But starting a business targeting Asia from the West has never been easier than it is today, from a logistical perspective in particular.
Anyone else? Yeah.
We talked about data on customers earlier. Like we also just had GDPR a couple of years ago. So do you see, like in the future, will we have more or less data on our customers, and will there be a time where customers can easily opt out of having us storing their data?
Yeah, so it's definitely something that we talk a lot about in Customer. What we decided to do was we wanted to base it on first-party data because as we see like cookieless environment and things like that are being rolling out. It was important for us that we focus on like this is something that the consumer needs to like accept that we have the data. What we do from there on is basically that we like take the time of the purchase they typically do and match it up with like ID's number, and that basically means that we get anonymous data into a customer profile that they actually agreed on to have. It sounds like a bit in the gray area, but as long as we decided to build it on the German GDPR and consent, and that's basically because the German restriction is like the most toughest one. And in general, we believe that the market only go one way in around GDPR. So definitely, it will be something that will come up a lot of times in the future as well. And it's going to be interesting to see how the market will go. We're talking a lot about like the Canadian Data Act, the California Data Act, and all these, and there is starting coming like data acts in specific consumer goods in general. So definitely there will be something in the future that will be interesting to look into that. But I think that's also why we kind of talk about this, start owning the data that you actually have access to right now, and then let's see how things will go in the future. But definitely be a big thing, definitely.
And I guess it will be very hard for companies in themselves to actually handle this in the future? As you say, there's going to be local laws in states in Canada and what you got, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think there is also the part about like what have been done a lot in the e-commerce industry today have been like, let's upload a list from our CMS system, give it to Facebook, let Facebook figure out what is our best customers. So basically they're just sending revenue back to you, but you have no clue what are these customers like, why did they came to you and stuff like that. And that where we trying to like, let's say, instead of giving them the opportunity to like having all the data, let's start enriching them, and let's say this is actually customers that we would like you to find more of, because we know they are profitable, we know they are not returning all the goods and stuff like that. So that's the way we look at it today.
Anyone? Yeah, one more question.
Yeah, I have a question that is maybe more targeted at Norpan, but maybe also the other ones of you. But when you go into segments or regions such as Middle East and Asia, what considerations do you have in terms of pricing of the product? As it is like, I suppose that it's different. In Denmark, you have higher disposable income, more purchasing power than maybe compared to some countries in the Middle East or in Asia.
So none of our core markets are radically different from a disposable income perspective than what we see in Europe. So we haven't, as such, localized our pricing too much. There are slight variations from market to market, but they're super small. And there's also some branding considerations regarding that. We are also a cross-border brand, so if we have a certain price in one country, then that's going to be present across all the marketplaces. If we have a distributor who then sells online or on the national marketplace at that price point, which is maybe then 20% lower than the Western RRPs, people could buy cross-border from there. So there are some risks also by having too high variations in the pricing globally. So at least for us, we have variations, but they're really minor. Nothing substantial.
I remember there was a story about Jysk, the Danish company. They started up in Asia, and their general thing was it's about having the possibility to buy cheap things in general to the home. But what the story goes around is that they basically had a really bad start because like Chinese people are not, it's not like quality if it's too cheap, and they have like plenty of options to buy cheap things. So they did a rebranding back then and started primarily selling their gold things in general. So there is, I think, in your case, it's definitely it's a brand, and it's something different that not necessarily should be localized in a different price. But that in some cases that will definitely make sense to have different prices, I think.
Exactly, especially China. We never had a discussion about should we reduce the price. We discussed should we increase it to increase our premium position. Exactly, and then there's of course the whole discussion of personalization of pricing, right? So where you can personalize the pricing depending on the user browsing around. And there's been some extreme cases like I don't recall if it was somebody who told me that or if it was something I read, but Amazon at some point they did personalized pricing on I think it was an iPhone or something like that in New York, where the prices in Harlem was much lower than Tribeca as an example, because the disposable income was just different even on small areas in the same state in the same city, and that created a huge debate and discussion whether that was the right thing to do and discrimination of people and things like that. So that's an extreme case, and I'm not sure whether that was just a story, whether it's true. But personalized pricing is something that's coming and in a high extent, and we are definitely seeing it on the big marketplaces now.
Legal.
Huh?
Is it legal to have personalized price? I know it is in Denmark.
We haven't considered it. I think I guess if it's you as a vertical brand managing it, I guess it's you can do it, right? But I'm actually not sure. It's a good question.
I can probably answer that one. I have a background as a lawyer. Yeah, but you're right. In Denmark, it's not an issue. Obviously, there may be local restrictions and rules, but in general, it's fully allowed and quite common actually. I think we have one more question, and then I think we will be rounding off because I think we are almost out of time. But yeah.
Last question to Soundboks, I think. Obviously, you guys are on a lot of platforms now. You have on Amazon, also your own e-com and so forth. But you have a product which is very much focused on being able to experience, right? Like it's a very high price point, but you also have to have a physical experience. I would guess to convince multiple touch points to convince someone to buy. I just saw that you had a big campaign now with, I think, Copenhagen Open, where you spun a lot of the skating festival. How do you make sure in all the different markets that you're getting in that you have all these multiple touch points in physical stores to events, stores, experience centers, and so forth?
Yeah. It's a lot of work. Yeah, I mean, for us, the community is really something that sort of the Soundboks brand is founded on, right? So when we talk about customers, we also talk about sort of subcultures and communities within this. So we talk about skate, we talk about action sports, we talk about snow, we talk about ski, we talk about dance, we talk about music. So I think, when we talk about entering new marketplaces and testing the viability, of course, we look at the purchase consumer profile, but we also look at sort of the target consumer and the brand fit that we are. And we try to develop actual relationships with real people who are driving these subcultures. So I know a lot of brands have sort of an influencer strategy, but ours is more of a host strategy. So we look at people who are leading these communities that have like-minded values with us that are driving the subculture and creating the environment. And we can do that obviously on a smaller level, and then that puts us into maybe some of these specialty retailers, right? More of the skate shops, more of the DJ shops. But then we also want to have bigger reach, right? And so that's where we partner with someone like Hi-Fi Klubben here, which also, helps because we have very good sound quality and that it meets their sort of brand in terms of the hi-fi experience that you get. But I think for us, it's equally, important to drive that interest and inspiration online, but then allow people to physically experience these products, not only just at retail, but also in the communities and with the community leaders and the environments that we feel are on brand for us. And that's why we sponsor things like the Copenhagen Open, and we work with Red Bull, et cetera.
Would you say then your retail strategy is more focused on awareness and actual conversion, or is it just to have to put it out there, and then people you actually funnel them into your e-com or marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, it actually sort of depends on the stage of the market, right? So when we're more established in a place like Denmark, it's very much also focused on conversion. When we're looking at a place like Germany or we're expanding in the US, then it's also very important for us to have that physical footprint to expand our awareness.
Great. And thank you very much for all the panelists to join today. I think it's been super interesting to hear about the future of e-commerce, and thanks for all the good questions and for people coming.
Absolutely.
I think that's it. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.